Hey, everybody. Thank you guys so much again for coming to Conversations with Teresa. It is Monday. It is 8:30, and you guys are in for such an amazing treat. We are in for such an amazing treat. If you haven't seen the flyer, the name of the podcast tonight is called You Do Have Issues. Sometimes we think that, I don't have issues. I'm good or whatever. But what I'm realizing is that we all have issues. You got issues, I got issues. And today we're going to start talking about what some of those issues are that you may or may not have been aware of. So tonight we get a chance to introduce the one and the only Dr. Christiana Awosan. I am ridiculously excited to have her on. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yay.
Yay!
Thank you, Teresa. I'm so excited to be here.
I am thrilled to death. Dr. Awasan, first of all, I'm going to keep saying Dr. Awasan because I am so excited. So, just a little bit of background. I have known Dr. Awasan before she was Dr. Awasan. I knew Dr. Awasan when she was Lola.
Yes,
And I still know you as Lola, but I am going to
yes.
give you your props because Dr. Awasan
Thank
is
you.
who you are. It is not only a part of you, but what you've grown into. And I'm super, super proud of you. And just what you're doing. You're making such an incredible impact on society in
Mm,
general. And I am super excited to have our guests really get a chance to know you, but also understand a little bit about themselves tonight. So give me a second. I'm going to brag on you a little bit because that's what I do. I'm going to I'm going to read off a little bit of your bio, and then I'm just going to ask you just to really talk about what you do in your own words. Does that sound good?
that sounds great.
All right, good stuff, good stuff. So, Dr. Christiana Awasan is the founder and director of Ibasami Relational Health. Dr. Awasan is also an AAMFT, American Association for Marriage and Family Therapists. She's a clinical fellow, approved clinical supervisor, and an AAMFT minority fellow. Whew, if that wasn't enough, you get a chance to conduct national and international trainings and seminars on issues that are related to understanding the sociocultural trauma, such as racial trauma, on the mental health, emotional, and relational lives of people of color.
Mhm.
That is a lot. And sometimes, again, going back to our title, you do have issues.
Mhm.
Sometimes we don't always realize the issues that we've had because we're just kind of used to being in this constant state of trauma. But
Mhm.
before I go on and before I just keep talking about that, why don't you tell us in your own words, first of all, where you got the name of your
Yes.
organization from,
Mhm.
and then tell us what you're able to do in that.
Yeah. No, that's great. First of all, before we start, thank you for the introduction. I am reminded of a quote by, I think it's Maya Angelou that says, I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. And the reason why I said that is because, yes, you knew me before I became Dr. Awosan, right? And you, Teresa, were one of the pivotal person in my life that really helped me to develop my character of really having self-confidence and just really like being determined to be who I am. I mean, you knew me since I was like 13.
It's
So
just 10
you
years ago.
had
That's all. That's all.
you had a huge influence and on my life, and I wouldn't be the person I am today if not because of how much you poured into me, and I won't be the doctor I am today because of persons like you. So I really appreciate that. So thank
You're
you.
gonna make me cry. Okay. All right. All right. I'm gonna let you keep going. Go ahead.
Crying is good, right?
It is good. It is good. Thank you.
So thank you. I really appreciate it. So I'm excited to be on with you today. And yes, the work that I do as a licensed marriage and family therapy really kind of center on understanding relationship, but particularly I wanted to understand relationships of Black and Brown people, particularly Black people. Because when you are in the field of psychotherapy, I majored in psychology as an undergrad at Syracuse University. And one of the things that I remember was I wanted to write a paper on Black families. And I
Mm.
couldn't really find any study. And I was like, what is going on? Like, how
Wow.
come there's no paper on like how Black families function in the
Uh-huh.
library? And the ones that I was finding was very kind of negative, like very negative, like pathologizing Black families. And I remember saying to myself that if I decided to get a PhD, because at this time I was trying to be a medical doctor. Thank goodness. Thank God I didn't go that route. I was like, if I were to get a PhD, I really want to focus it on studying like Black relationship, Black families. And
Oh,
then I was
okay.
like, wait, there's a program that really fits who I am, which is marriage and family therapy. And so I was like, yeah, I want to do therapy with people, and particularly Black people, and study Black people and Black families. And the reasons why is that the reason why I focus on families is because, and just relationship in general, right? We know
Mhm.
that relationship can be something that really helps us to grow as people, just as like I said at the beginning, your influence on me, our relationship really helps us to grow, like help me to grow as a person. And our
Mm.
relationship is so powerful in that way that we're able to grow if it really is a relationship where we're seen and we're heard and we're affirmed, right? At the same
Right,
time, we
right,
also know on the flip side that relationship can be difficult if they are toxic, right? And if people are
right.
not seen, if people are not heard, and to ground it in just really just people of color and Black people in general, just thinking about slavery and colonization and how one of the things that were kind of in a sense designed to destroy was just the relationship, right, within
Mm.
Black families. But at the same time, those relationships actually, I believe, were the ones that saved us, right, as people as well, right? So I really wanted to understand our relationship and how to really keep our relationship strong as
Mhm.
people. So when I decided to create my practice, I really wanted to center it on Black and Brown people, and particularly Black people, and thinking about the ways in which society doesn't see us. And when I say society, I'm very specific. I mean, white society doesn't see
Okay,
us, and the ways
right.
in which we've internalized, just really in order to survive, the negative messages of
Yeah.
what society tells us we are, right? We're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not pretty enough, right? And there's this sense of like, oh, I'm broken and I'm not whole. So I really wanted to really make my practice a place where people can come and be seen and realize that we see them and they are whole, right? So I decided to name it Ibisami Relational Health. And because I'm Nigerian specifically, I'm Yoruba, so the Ibi is like actually my middle name, which means to be born.
Okay.
Sami is like the end of like my last name, right? So it's this whole notion of like being born fits me, right? The meaning is like being born
I
fit
love
me.
it.
I am born to be whole, complete, and
Yeah.
not lacking in anything, right? And
Come on
as
now.
Brown people, that's what I want to affirm, like mentally, emotionally, psychologically,
Yeah.
spiritually, and spirit and relationally for us. So that's where it comes from.
Wow. That is pretty phenomenal. And even as you're saying all that, again, we don't even always realize that we may be feeling broken or that
Mhm,
we're not feeling whole, right? Because if we're
mhm.
used to being in a certain arena, that's just how we've always been. And so
Exactly.
we don't know anything outside of that.
Right. Right.
So, whew,
Right. Right.
that was a lot. That was a lot.
And that's where you hear people say, like, I'm born this way. And you're like, yeah, but I don't think you're born to like be always arguing or have a defenses or like the
Right.
timid, right? Like I remember I was that way too. I was like, I'm so
I
quiet.
remember that.
This is just the way I am, right?
I literally remember those words coming out of your mouth. And now you are, helping couples, you're helping individuals, you're helping people to, like you said, to be whole, to give them that voice, to give
Mhm,
them that, that affirmation that
mhm,
you are created to be who you are created to be, which is pretty
mhm,
amazing. We are
mhm.
amazing as people. So thank you so much for, looking into that, to, really delving into that issue, because some people will be
Mhm.
like, oh, there's no research on it, so I guess I can't do it. But you're like,
Right.
I'm going to create it because it's happening,
Mhm.
right? I mean, we
It
both
is
grew up
happening.
in Black families, so
Right.
uh, so we
You
knew it was
see it all
happening.
around you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things that really caught my attention from from really what you do,
Mhm,
where it talked about where you talked about you do trainings and seminars on issues of really understanding things like racial trauma,
mhm,
on the mental, emotional, and relational lives of people of color.
mhm.
And we may or may not think about it, right? But something that just happened last week, I
Yeah.
can't help but say, I think
Mhm,
about our beloved, I have to say beloved, right? Because
mhm.
she's now endeared to me, Claudine Gay,
Yeah,
who was recently fired from Harvard
yeah,
as the president.
yeah.
And although, I never knew her, I knew when she became president, I was like, okay, this is great stuff, right?
Right.
And I didn't pay that much attention to her along the way. I'm like,
Mhm,
this is great. And then she came into the
mhm,
news and different things.
mhm,
But then when she got
mhm,
fired, I realized that I had a reaction to that.
mhm, mhm.
And it was kind of like, right? It was
Yeah,
it was more like I knew they were going to do it. I knew that they were going to try to find some way. They trying to bring up what was it, that plagiarism, and I'm like, you would have
right.
figured that out beforehand, right? And so it's just like you
I
just
mean,
shake your
she's the
head.
president of Harvard. Do you know how many rounds of like
Okay, okay.
interviews and assessment and evaluation? Don't get me started.
Right, exactly, right. And so I feel that, and there are definitely people who would, they weighed in and they said things on social media, and so anyway, I just realized that I had a reaction to it that was, I guess, typical for
Yeah,
me. Like it's just like, they done did it again. They,
yeah.
meaning, white society has done it again,
Mhm,
to
mhm,
to one of our own.
mhm.
But then when I think it was after that you were able to come on to the show, then I was like, oh, this lines up,
Mhm,
So
mhm,
I'd like for you to talk to me, or talk to us
mhm,
about that, about my
mhm.
reaction, or about my feelings about it. Is this my normal? Is this our normal? Society's
Right,
normal? Like,
right.
let's say something
Yeah.
to
No, that's a really good point that you're making, and your reaction makes a whole lot of sense, right?
that. Hmm.
Your reaction makes sense because you are a person who is a Black woman. You're a
Mhm.
person who is a Black person, right? Who also is a Black female professional. So you know what it feels like to be in an environment that is majority white as well. And I think
Mhm.
it's interesting that you said that because I remember myself having that reaction too. My sister having that reaction. One of my friends, which we're both like we went to school together, she had having that reaction too. I can say probably every single Black woman and Black person who've worked in corporate America, who've worked in academia, who've also even worked in like maybe a grocery store that they're the only person of color, know
Mhm.
that experience of, oh wow, like once again, like we can rise up, you have to pull us down. And so
Mm.
that is basically a reaction to what is called vicarious racial trauma. So
Okay.
what that means is like you're looking at somebody, another person that looks like you is basically like vilified and demonized, right? And made to kind of feel like the work that they've done is not good enough
Mm-hmm.
and that they
Mm-hmm.
don't deserve that position, that she didn't work hard for it. She must have plagiarized, right? And then
Mm,
she said
right.
something against she was being anti-Semitic, which is like totalizing her, which is vilifying her, which is that's
Right.
really not what she meant by that. I mean
Right.
it's she's standing up for all human beings' dignity. That's what she was
Exactly.
standing up for. But
Right.
I think the reaction makes sense, which is basically part of experiencing vicarious racial trauma, which is
Mm-hmm.
anger, right? Which is frustration, which is exhaustion, because this is not the first time that we've
Yes.
seen this, right? We saw this with
Right.
President Barack Obama. We've seen this in our own personal lives, right? Whenever Black people rise up, there's a way
Right.
in which to pull us down, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I didn't, again, I didn't necessarily, well, you gave it a name. Thank you. Tell me the name again.
Vicarious racial trauma,
All right.
meaning that if you see someone that looks like you, right? Which this thing always happen with us as Black people. Usually when something happened that's bad, right? We're like, is that person a Black person? Or when somebody
Yeah,
like
that's true.
gay like gets right
Yeah.
gets like she resigns, we're like, oh my goodness, I know what that feels like because I've
Yeah.
been there before. So we
Right.
know what that experience of being subjugated feels like, of being
Right.
oppressed feels like, because as Black and brown people, that's what we have to experience every day. And so
Right.
our reaction is a reaction to that vicarious racial trauma. And even more specifically, well, my mentor, Kenneth Hardy, who said it's invisible racial trauma wounds, right? And
Mm-hmm.
part of invisible racial trauma wounds is really having to experience constant, right? Cumulative experiences of just really being devalued in society. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. You don't
Mm-hmm.
deserve to be the president of Harvard, the first
Right.
female Black president. You don't deserve to be that. And so
Right.
this feeling of like, you're not good enough, we then started to internalize these experiences of just really devaluation, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And that experience of devaluation is also what shows up when we see Claudine Gay and we're like, oh my goodness, I can relate to her. I know
Yep.
what that feels like. I can't even
Right.
imagine what she might be going through right now. I
Right.
can't
Oh
even
my,
imagine, like, one of the things I thought, the decision to actually say, I'm going to step down, I'm going to resign. I'm like, I don't know what that felt like for her because I've been there before where I had to leave a job because
mm-hmm.
of experiences of like discrimination and racism and whiteness that I was experiencing in academia.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
And I won't go too much further into this,
Mhm.
but the fact that she even decided to stay at Harvard, I thought I
Right.
was like, wow. And I just thought about the strength that, we go through this trauma, but we also find a lot of strength in whatever the situation is, because it does.
Right.
It's going to take a lot of strength for her to still stay and still see what's going on.
Yes.
And there are
Yes.
times when we can look at the bigger picture and maybe and I don't know, obviously I don't know her, but
Mhm.
she might be saying, Harvard is a great place. It is, this is why I chose to step into this role and things like that. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
um despite what was done to her, the strength that it takes to stay
Mhm.
is amazing. And maybe she's thinking, I still got work to do here. I might not do it
Yeah.
in that. I might not be
Yeah.
dealing with your crazy every day, right? Because it's just like, seriously, no, I can still be powerful. I
Mhm.
might not take that role. I may not let you
Mhm.
be my punching bag, but I got some stuff to do here.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
again,
Mhm.
that's my own take. I have no idea if that's what she's thinking or
All right.
whatever, but I
Yeah.
am all the
Yeah.
more proud of her. And she gives us great example of how to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think one of the things I thought about that too, the strength to stay.
Mm,
The strength to stay in a space where you're not validated, you're
yeah.
not seen, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
decision to even stay, which a lot of us sadly have to stay in working environments that are
Yeah.
toxic, that
Right.
doesn't see us, and especially when we are one of a few or the only black and brown person, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of strength to
Right.
actually stay in an environment like that. And at the
Right.
same time, I think sometimes what I hope that we will notice as black and brown people is that we don't have to stay. I know
Yeah.
survival is important, right? Like we have
Mm-hmm.
to pay bills,
Right.
we need to feed, right? We need to keep roof over
Mm-hmm.
our head. And at the same time, if we think about the toll of staying in a place where your dignity is not affirmed, it really eats away at us
Mm.
mentally, emotionally, and
Right.
physically. And because if we look at all the health index chart, right, it's
Yeah.
usually black people dying of heart attack, right? High
Uh,
cholesterol, high blood pressure, right?
uh,
And that is a lot because all of this racial stressors, and that's one stress, like racial stress is one stress, right? All of the like racial stressors and traumas that we're experiencing is having an impact on our physical body, on our,
right. You're right.
and research is showing that like on a daily basis that racial trauma is connected to also the physical health of black and brown people and
Mm-hmm.
also our mental and emotional well-being as well. So yes, there's that strength to stay, and we have to also consider at what cost.
Right.
At
That's
what
true.
cost.
That's
So
true. Maybe that's why Michelle Obama was like, "Peace out, like I'm out of here." Like she was able to walk
definitely.
away with no problem. She was like, "I'm
Right,
good. I am
right,
good. I'm
right.
good." You know.
Yeah.
So
And we have to
absolutely.
think about that. When is it time to exit? Or
Mm-hmm.
when is it time to take care of myself? And
Right.
it's a hard decision because we are people that are very committed. That's one thing I love about us as black people. We're very committed.
Yes.
And at the
Absolutely.
same time, it's like we have to really think about what toll does that have on us.
That's true. Okay.
Hmm.
So we talked a bit about, how it is in the workplace, but how
Hmm.
do these traumas and how do these incidences, how do they play in our personal? So it could
Hmm.
be with our parents or parenting. It can be with
Hmm.
our spouse or our siblings. Like how is it?
Hmm.
What's the impact in the personal realm?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, which is the reason why I'm talking about the cost, right? There's the strength to stay at
Mhm,
work and to be able to say, hey, I want to do this because I want to do this. And for some of us, it's like because I want to prove them wrong, right?
mhm, mhm, mhm.
And that's not actually helpful because it takes a toll on us mentally. And
Yeah,
when it takes a toll on us mentally, it therefore takes a toll on us relationally as well, right?
yeah.
So, one of the ways in which racial trauma takes a toll on us, I kind of talked about the invisible wound, one of it being
Mhm,
devaluation. Another one of it is voicelessness, right? Really feeling like because of the ways in which I'm treated in this space that is toxic to who I am as a Black person, I
mhm,
don't want to like speak up. So we have this fear. I don't want to become the angry Black woman or the angry
mhm.
Black man, right? So
Mm.
there's a way in which we're like, okay, let me fit in and not be seen,
Right, right.
right? Let me just kind of coast and not be too much. And so we kind of like dim our light, we dim our
Mm.
voice
Right,
in order
right.
to survive, which makes sense, right? Like I
Yeah,
said, We have family, we have kids to feed, we need to put a roof over our head.
Responsibilities.
There's
That's
a
right.
way in which we mute ourselves because of the impact of racism. That's the invisible wound. That's the part of racial trauma, racism, whiteness that we don't see, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then what happens is when you mute yourself, when you're voiceless in order to survive, and then when you get into your relationships, so there's a way in which we can, because if you've kind of like, I've been voiceless for a while, when you get to
Mm-hmm.
a quote unquote a place that you feel a bit secure, which is usually a personal relationship, or
Yep.
we feel to be seen, there's a way in which we let that voicelessness open up. And the ways it open up is there's like rage that comes up sometimes.
Mm.
So this might show up in all the stressors at work, then comes home with you.
Okay.
And all your spouse is asking is, well, how was your day, hon? What do you mean? Right? Like there's this impatience that comes up. Or the kids are like,
Mhm.
can you help me with this? I don't have time for that because there's so much of now space, which is good
Mhm.
within the relationship to open up,
Mhm.
but it's not in a way that is affirming to that relationship because now we're kind of bringing all that rage out, all that frustration and all that anger out and pouring
Mhm.
out into the people that we care about and that we love. So that's one
Mhm.
way of that.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. That's real. That's real. And you know what I mean? Like, because there are so many, obviously, as a family therapist, you know all the different challenges that are in a
Hmm.
family. You
Hmm.
know, again, just with kids, it could be with your spouse or with your
Hmm.
partner. It could
Hmm.
just be, and then the financial on top of that. There's so
Right,
many different stresses that
right,
that come on. And again, we don't always necessarily realize it is from what I left my 9 to 5
right,
from, because
right,
home could be a safe space.
right,
And then we have
right.
to go out into the world
Yes,
and
yes.
deal with that. And we don't, because we're not always talking about it,
Hmm.
we're not really sure where this is going to go. Right.
Hmm.
Obviously, we can talk about this for forever and a day because there's a lot to talk about. But I do have a question or a thought.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know, 10, 15 years ago,
Hmm.
I feel like employers, uh, like you went to work,
Hmm.
right? You just went to
Yeah,
work. You did what you're supposed to do, you left, and then you dealt with everything else.
yeah.
Nowadays, and this is not, for or against, it just kind of is, but now culturally, with this generation in particular, there's a lot that this generation brings to work
Hmm.
or maybe expects from work, from their
Right.
employer.
Yeah.
So we're getting, and I can't say we, I don't know, I forget what generation I am, but I'm not this current one. Um, so, but again, I used to go to work, I went to work, I dealt with everything else afterwards. But now you come to work and you get your friendships, you get your
Hmm.
validation, you
Hmm.
get your,
Hmm.
affirmation, you get you get so
Hmm.
much from work.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I'm not really sure where that balance lies. Should the employer be taking on this role? What's the responsibility?
Yeah.
Do they have a responsibility in really trying to help Black and Brown folks work through this? I guess is my question. I knew there
Yeah.
was a question in there somewhere, but but what do you think? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I definitely get like what you're saying. And I think employers have responsibility in every ways, not only to Black and Brown employees, and also to their white employees as well. Because the
Mhm,
way I see it is, it is a relationship.
mhm.
Relationship is what make businesses.
Right.
Relationship is what make families. Relationship is what makes life in general, right? So
Mhm,
I know people, I mean, especially in a capitalistic society, we're so focused on making the money. But really, you can't make the money if you don't invest in the people and if you don't
Right.
invest really in the relationship
Okay.
that the people have with the organization and with each other, right? So I
Mhm.
feel like yes, employers have responsibility to be culturally aware, right? And so
Mhm.
that what that looks like is like actually being able to recognize that one first identifying that they don't need to hire every single person that is similar, right? Like I think I remember one time there was a company I was working with, not working with them, but consulting with them. And it's like
Mhm.
everybody had almost the same name, Allison, Allison, Allison. I'm like, did
Okay.
you all just like decide to hire all Allison? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. So I think even that puts the company at risk when you hire people who are just from similar background, similar
Right.
worldview, similar perspective. There's no diversity in in the perspective of how do we solve this problem? How do we look at this problem? What
Mhm.
diverse experiences can we bring in to solve a world's issue, right? Because even this product that we're trying to sell, we're selling it to a diverse world. But
That's
then the
right.
people that are working to produce the product or to solve the problem all are from one racial background, one
Right.
ethnic background, one
Right.
gender,
Right.
one race, one like religion or like even sexual orientation. We need
Mhm.
diversity of people. And so
Right.
that means that we need to understand what that looks like. What does diversity of people look like? And then when
Mhm.
we get diversity of people, right? And it doesn't mean that we get one token black person, one token
Right.
Asian person.
That's
I'm
right.
talking about diversity at all
Right.
levels. And it doesn't mean that all the workers who are like middle manager to the people who are staff are all people of color, and then the people in leadership are all white.
Thank you.
That's not diversity
No,
either,
it is not.
right? Like diversity needs to be from top to bottom, bottom to top.
Right.
Everybody is able to see themselves represented, right?
That's
They're
right.
able to see their worldviews represented and affirmed and seen. And so
Yes.
it's important because then that helps us as human beings to even struggle with differences. Right? I always hate this phrase. People always say something like, um, we need to focus on our similarities and not our differences. Like the what brings us together is our
Mm.
similarities and not our differences. I say it's both. It's both our
Mhm.
similarities and our differences. And more so, we need to even focus more on our differences because
Right.
within our differences, we're able to really truly get to know each other because now we're asking more questions. We're more
Right.
curious
Right.
as to why you think this way, why you see this problem this way, why are you bringing this solution this way, right? Because now we're asking questions. We're being more curious rather than like making assumptions about what the other person might think because we're
Right.
so similar. So I think I know what they're thinking as well.
Yeah.
So employers, organization are responsible because they need to really be culturally affirming in order to give, because I feel like when people are, and research have shown this, when organizations have more diverse people and working for them, people are more satisfied,
Absolutely.
right? People are
Absolutely.
more satisfied. People are able to really understand where the other person is coming from because then they're more curious. They want to know, they want to get to know the other person,
Mhm.
right? We're able to
Mhm.
solve problems quicker. We're able to come up with new ideas, new ideations quicker because now we have a diverse group of people working. And I feel
Mhm.
like particularly for a white organization in really taking care of their black and brown employers or employees is really representation matters. And especially for this generation, Gen Z are very focused on their mental health, whether it's
Right.
at work, whether it's in their relationship. Millennials are very focused on like really having a diverse group as well. And so I
Mhm.
feel like in a working environment that doesn't affirm people, particularly this generation, is going to struggle.
Right.
So there has to
Absolutely.
be a way to really kind of start working on that, like
Right.
ASAP. Like we needed to start doing it 10 years ago. So
Right. Right. And I do think that there are plenty of organizations that do, and they
Mm-hmm.
try.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my hope is that it doesn't die out. There was a point where DEIB was like it, right? Everybody was
Mm-hmm.
hiring for this, and now that there's not some big thing in the news, right? We can kind
Right.
of tend to be like, oh, okay, maybe it's not that important, maybe it's not,
Right.
but it so is. It is us. It
Right.
is us.
Right.
It doesn't totally define us, but it is us,
It
and
is
so
us.
it allows us to be ourselves, to bring our full selves to the
Yeah.
table in every way, shape, or form. So,
Yeah.
so
And I just
absolutely.
wanna,
So employers, hopefully you heard that. I'm just saying.
yeah. Yeah.
Super,
And
super.
just really quickly, I want to add to that. I think the also part of the reasons why it's dying now is because I feel like white society, white employers, things diversity, inclusion, and belonging is something that is just the problem for Black and Brown people.
Mm,
So when we think about whiteness in itself or race, we're thinking, oh, that's issue for Black and Brown people. But
right.
what people needs to start understanding, particularly white people and white employer, is that diversity issue, inclusion issue, right? Equity issue, belonging issue, race issue is all of our issues. Black, white,
Absolutely.
Asian, Latino, like all of our issues
Mhm.
as human beings that we need to work on. So if we make that a core focus of our organization, people will just feel more affirmed, more represented, and the height of what people can do as human beings will show up. So
Right. You're right. Dr. Awasan, I have kept you past the time. I apologize, but this conversation was so needed, so rich, so affirming,
yeah,
right? Just affirming that, yeah, I got issues, right? You do have issues. And so it's not made up. It's not made up in our minds or anything. It is real. And
mm-hmm.
the more that we're able to identify it, talk about it, then we're able to deal with it in a healthy way. And so you've
Yeah.
given us some vocabulary words. But as we end off, can you tell us? I know that you are in New York and New Jersey.
Hmm.
That's where your practice is.
Yeah.
But if you could, if we had any questions, how is a way that we could get in touch with you and your practice, or maybe ask a couple of questions in regards to this, and then maybe you can share later on just some resources that we may have. Where can we reach you at?
Yeah, so thank you so much for this. This has been great having this conversation. So people can reach me at ibisummit.com. So I think it's like in the banner. Yeah. So on our contact info, you can just like shoot me a message, questions that you might have, and I'll
Okay.
usually get it. And also people can go to our Instagram handle at Ibisame Relational. So they can also message us there as well, and also get to
Okay.
see some of the content that we put out, because we do put a lot of content out around like racial trauma and really how do we build healthy relationships, whether it is with our family, our partner, even in regards to even dating as well. So we do a lot on that as well. So yeah, that's where people can reach me.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for um, just being a voice for those who didn't always have one, or is learning how to use their voice.
Yes.
But it makes such a big difference. So I'm so super grateful for you, and I'm glad to call you a friend and really a great inspiration. So keep up
Thank
the great.
you.
All right. Good
Thank
stuff. Good stuff.
you.
To
Thank
our
you.
listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really do hope that uh, the hype, it wasn't just hype. I told you you got issues. I did. I told you that. I hope that you can see it, but I hope you can recognize it and deal with it in an effective way. Thank you guys so much. Looking forward to seeing you guys right back here Monday at 8:30. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. down below. All right. Have an amazing week, and we will talk soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.